In this breakout lesson, I want to introduce a really cool concept called parallel harmony, or also known as planing harmony. This is a type of non-functional harmony because, well, we just get to completely ignore major and minor keys and chord functions to create this harmonic concept. The basic idea of parallel harmony is that we take a chord, usually a triad, but it can be any collection of notes, and we move every note in that triad by the same class of interval. In other words, it's like we're taking the shape of this triad and just simply dragging it around at will. We can do this dragging in two ways, either diatonically or chromatically. I'll actually explain more first with chromatically playing harmony, since I think it's actually just a little bit easier to understand. To create chromatically planing harmony, we'll move every note in this triad, this C major triad, either up or down by the same interval. Let's move every note down by a minor second. So the C moves down to B, the E moves down to D sharp, and the G moves down to F sharp. This C major triad now becomes a B major triad, since every note was moved down by a half step. We can continue to do this as many times as we want. All these are just moving down by half steps. We can do this in whatever direction we want, so we can go either up or down or both. And we can do this by whatever interval we want as well, so it doesn't have to be a half step every time. It can be a whole step, it can be thirds, it can be a half step, then a third, then a fifth, and then some more half steps. It can be whatever you want. Notice that all of these are major triads, every single one of them, but they don't fit in any key, and none of them have any specific functions. This is really part of the freedom of parallel harmony, because we just get to experiment and move these shapes wherever we want. Just for the sake of experimentation and just trying stuff out, what if we took a C major triad, planed it up by a major third, so everything is moved up by a major third, then how about down a half step, then maybe up by another major third, and then how about down by a tritone? Which creates this really interesting sounding progression. Remember, all those notes of the triad are being moved the exact same amount, so they're all still major triads. And hear how interesting that sounded. As I said, there's just so much freedom with this, since we can play not just major triads, but we can also apply the same process to minor triads, seventh chords, clusters, or just any collection of notes that you can possibly think of. You just have to move every note of the chord by the same amount. With these chromatically playing triads, we can also create more than just cool chord progressions. We can actually also create melodies with these too. What if we took the first little bit of our theme that we wrote, that one, and then we make each melody note the root of a major triad. So all those notes are the bottoms of major triads. In doing this, we're going to create more planing triads, and just listen to how interesting this sounds. Whoa, that's pretty cool. Now let me show you what happens when we chromatically plane minor triads. Let's write a very simple little chromatic figure here, something like this, that wiggles around chromatically. Something like that. Now, just like we did with the major triads, let's make all of those notes the roots, the bottoms of minor triads. Now hear how cool this sounds. Yeah, it just straight up sounds like Star Wars now, but for good reason, because planing triads are just all over John Williams' music. Now, I mentioned that there was a second type of planing called diatonic planing. This is like chromatic planing, but instead of moving every note by the same interval, we move every note by the same interval while making sure every note stays within the current scale. Let's once again suppose we're in C major, and we want to play this second inversion A minor triad diatonically up by a step. If we were doing this chromatically, every note of the chord would move up by a major second, giving us this A minor to B minor. But to do this diatonically, every note moves up by either a minor second or major second. Essentially, every note needs to move to a note that is within the key of C major. So the top note can move up a major second to B, because B is in C major, but the middle note would only move up a minor second to F, because if it were to move up a major second to F sharp is not in the key of C major, so it can only move up to F. And then the bottom note, C, can move up a major second to D. And so now this chromatically planed A minor triad moves up to B diminished. So now both chords here are within the key of C major. But we're still not having to think at all about what chords they are or their function. If we were to continue doing this, we would end up with something like this. Once again, notice that each note is moving by some type of step, but it's a major or minor second depending on which type it takes to land on a note within our key of C major. And of course, just like I did with major and minor chromatically playing triads, you can still make chord progressions and melodies with diatonically playing triads. Now this has been a fairly quick dive into parallel harmony, but there's just so much more you can do with it. So if you're hungry for more, I would highly encourage you to go check out my YouTube channel. It's just called David Macaulay. And go watch a lot of my John Williams analyses, especially Star Wars. You don't have to understand everything I'm talking about in there, but just look for any time I mention the use of planing or parallel harmony and see how Williams uses it, because he mastered it and just uses it so stinking much. And hopefully that'll start giving you a lot of ideas and inspiration for your own music. I know it definitely did for me.